Hey everybody, how's it going? Thanks for joining me this afternoon. I am Auron MacIntyre. You have those weeks where everything happens all at once, and that was definitely the case just this weekend. I was out of town most of last week. I ended up going to the National Conservatism Convention, NatCon 4, in Washington, D.C. I was a speaker there. My plan was to just come back and talk a little bit about that on Monday. Figured that, I'd go ahead and update you on kind of what they're trying to do there, what that movement is, what the different factions are involved, all of these things, all that inside baseball. Then I ended up having to fly over to Dallas. The Blaze is launching a new show there. News Tonight. You should check that out. They had me fill in there for one of the anchors on Friday. However, when I got back here back home to my studio, found out obviously that Donald Trump had been shot. And this is something that I wish was shocking. I wish this is something that couldn't have seen coming, but I did. I predicted this several months ago, especially when actually I've predicted it several times, including when the New Republic started running pictures of Donald Trump as Hitler. I said at the time that the press is very clearly laying the groundwork to justify the assassination of Donald Trump. Now, I wish that I could say that they gave me some kind of magical power to see into the future. I could claim some kind of supernatural foresight. But really, I wasn't alone. Guys like Tucker Carlson had predicted the same thing and caught a lot of flack for doing so. The evidence is pretty obvious. The writing was on the wall for anybody who's willing to see it. The left had whipped themselves, their foot soldiers, into a murderous frenzy. And it was only a matter of time before someone took them seriously. So we're going to dive into all that, guys. We're going to talk about what happened, the political implications, the moral implications, what this means, everything surrounding the security, many questions about how this even happened. We'll start diving into all of that. But before we do, let's talk about one of today's sponsors. Hey guys, as a kid, we all loved eating cereal, but as adults, we don't want all the sugar that those cereals come with, and most cereals don't give you the protein that you need. That's why I'm glad I found Magic Spoon. It's like a nostalgic, delicious cereal that tastes like my childhood favorites, but without the sugar and with a ton of protein. And if you're already a Magic Spoon fan, then I've got great news. Magic Spoon has turned their super popular cereal into high protein treats that are light, crispy, and taste just like those classic crunchy cereal bars. They're a great after gym snack. They're full of protein. They're already one of my favorite things to grab on the go. Every serving of Magic Spoon cereal has 13 grams of protein, 0 grams of sugar, and 4 grams of net carbs, so you can feel good about what you're eating. They've got flavors like fruity and cocoa, but peanut butter is my favorite. Magic Spoon's brand new treats are crispy, crunchy, airy, and an easy way to get 11 grams of protein on the go. And for the first time ever, Magic Spoon treats are available in grocery stores with delicious flavors like marshmallow and chocolate peanut butter. So go ahead and get $5 off your next order at magicspoon.com/Auron, or look for Magic Spoon in your nearest grocery store. That's magicspoon.com/Auron for $5 off. So, like I said, I wish that the events that unfolded at the Trump rally were surprising in any way. It was still shocking, obviously, to see what happened. Thank God that Trump only got injured in the ear. He was only shot there. We were about an inch away from having a radically different timeline, a radically different country. I really don't even want to think about all the alternatives, though many of them were quite gruesome or disastrous. But really, while it's shocking to see everything unfold, it's not surprising. The left had been taking us here for a very long time. Obviously, the media has portrayed Republican candidates for as dangerous for a long time. They've talked about Mitt Romney or John McCain as these incredibly dangerous people with radical ideas. But ever since Donald Trump announced his candidacy in 2015, there's been a particularly rabid vitriol from the press. Donald Trump was obviously this reality TV show guy. No one took him seriously at first. He had some interesting lines. He was funny, but a lot of people didn't lend him a lot of credence. I know I didn't lend him a lot of credence when he first showed up on the scene. But he started involving himself in these debates, and yes, he was crass, and yes, he was rude, and Yes, in many cases, he was over the top. But he also was talking about issues that no one else was willing to talk about. He was talking about immigration. He was talking about economic protection. He was talking about ending foreign wars. He was talking a lot about things that people in the middle of America, the working and middle class people in areas like the Rust Belt who have just been forgotten by both parties, really cared about. And that's one of the things that Trump did that made him so dangerous to the establishment. He was willing to speak to something about American identity to a forgotten people who had been basically thrown to the ground by their leaders, and he was willing to go ahead and connect with them and tell them that they matter and speak to their issues. He wasn't perfect on this. This isn't me telling you that Trump is a perfect guy, but this is why the media hated Trump so much. This was his unforgivable sin. There were these old, obsolete Americans, and they were supposed to just die deaths of despair somewhere. And instead, Trump kind of said, "No, I'm going to speak for you." And that was a huge problem. And that's why the left dedicated themselves to destroying this guy, especially after he got elected. We got the Russia hoax and everything else, and it was just off to the races trying to make sure that this guy could not implement any of his agenda. You know, for a long time, the left has been calling conservatives and right wingers racists and sexists and homophobes and all that stuff. And when you have that kind of relentless slander, yeah, it's bad for the public discourse, but it's been going on for so long and it's so relentless, it just kind of fades into the background. But during Trump's presidency, you saw an escalation of that rhetoric, right? It moved from just the normal, oh, he's a racist, what a terrible guy, to first, oh, maybe they're white supremacists. We started seeing this all the time, the introduction of white supremacists. And eventually they just started escalating full on to fascists. Now, this is always what the left had wanted to say about the right. This is always how they viewed people on the right, but they weren't dumb enough to say it out loud. They knew that that kind of rhetoric was really dangerous. And so, even though they felt it, they wanted to say it, there was some level of self control. They were able to not blurt this out at every opportunity. But they started, increasingly using this type of rhetoric. And a lot of people on the right didn't notice because they were so used to being called all these terrible names, all these slurs, all these evil things that they didn't really catch why this shift in language matters. And the reason it matters is that while in our current paradigm, racists are bad people, they're very bad people. They're guilty of one of the worst crimes you can commit in our modern American age, even though that's not even close to true. But even though they were guilty of those crimes, they were still humans, right? A racist was still human to some extent. However, fascists, now fascists, they're just calling you Nazis at that point, right? That's all they're saying. You're just mid-century Germans bent on taking over the world and exterminating populations. And in the modern secular kind of theology that we have today, Adolf Hitler is Satan, right? That he's just a stand-in for people. Adolf Hitler is Satan for people who think they're too complex to believe in evil. They believe in evil, of course, but they've redefined it. And the evil is you, the conservative, who is obviously a fascist and therefore just like Adolf Hitler. And fascists are, of course, inhuman agents of evil. So any kind of action, including violence, that you want to use to keep something like that from taking over, well, that's entirely reasonable. So that's why the left started using the slogan, "Hey, you can punch a Nazi," right? That started coming around in 2017 after someone slugged Richard Spencer in the face, and from there they started saying, "Oh, well, all these people are fascists." So if you just follow the logic, well, it's okay to hurt fascists, and oh, it turns out that all these conservatives were all secret fascists the whole time, and so all of a sudden political violence is on the table for these people, right? In a very real way. And the thing about political violence is it's the kind of fire that burns right through your social fabric. Once you set that fire, it really becomes impossible to control. The elites want to control it. They want to be able to maneuver it. They think, oh, it's a powerful weapon, and how bad could it get? But it always gets very bad, and that's why any ruling elite that actually cares about the future of the country knows better than to break this stuff out. Like that, this is the kind of thing that you do not deploy in public unless you really are trying to drive things to a terrible place. I mean, political street violence and things like assassination attempts, that's the kind of stuff that happens right before things really pop off. Things get extremely kinetic across your country, which is why the Black Lives Matter riots and the Antifa riots were a really bad omen, because when you have these riots raging across your country and the police just end up kneeling in front of most of the protesters instead of stopping any of this, it sends a really serious message. And see, the people on January 6th, they thought they had gotten that message. They thought, oh, well, I guess perhaps we can push the envelope when it comes to political action. Maybe these protests can get more aggressive, but they quickly found out that no, those full blown violent riots, that's for the left. That's what they get to do, not you. If you're a grandma who was standing, you know, 2 miles outside of the Capitol during January 6th, the the police aren't going to just kneel in front of you. No, the FBI is going to be hunting you down. They're going to be scrubbing every piece of footage, pinging every cell phone tower. They're going to send the entire might of the security state after you. Political violence is something the left is allowed to do, and you're just supposed to sit down and take it. But again, that's something that only works for so long. Now, I want to go ahead and get a little further into uh, what happened here and what I think the political implications are going to be. But before we do, let's hear about. Let's go ahead and hear from job stacking. Hey guys, let me tell you about today's sponsor, job stacking. More paychecks, less hustle, working from home. That's what job stacking is all about. If you're a remote or hybrid worker looking to maximize your earning potential, then consider joining the Job Stacking Mentorship Program. The program is designed by Ralph Haltza, the creator of Job Stacking, to help you successfully implement a strategy that will allow you to collect multiple paychecks from different jobs without burning out or getting caught by employers. Job stacking has already helped many people double or even triple their incomes. Luke Hill, a financial analyst living in the UK, has used job stacking to stack 3 different jobs and went from making $5K a month to $15K a month. But job stacking isn't just about increasing incomes. It's also about helping our guys gain more independence by no longer being a slave to debt or a single employer who hates their values. Andrew Gustafsson, a credit analyst from Australia, is now stacking 4 salaries, which he has used to pay off his personal and student debt and buy a home for his family. If you don't currently have a remote job, no worries. The program is also designed to help you land remote jobs so that you can go ahead and get started. So if you want to double your income and stop relying on a single paycheck from a woke employer, go to jobstacking.com/start now. That's jobstacking.com/start now and book a call with Rolf today. Now, obviously, cable news has now, and the Democratic politicians have now been deploying this language of fascist for a while, but things got really edgy in 2022 when Biden started to use it. I mean, it's already bad, right? We're already building to this inevitable outcome. But when Biden starts using it in in a fundraiser, and then when he starts using the same language in his famous blood red speech in front of Independence Hall, that's a bad sign, right? When you have the president of the United States coming out and saying, that the MAGA Republicans and Donald Trump, they represent extremism that threatens the foundation. It's a democracy is under assault. This is language that is going to bring about a predictable result. Biden fires off tweets, or whoever's tweeting for Biden fires off tweets that say things like, Trump is a genuine threat to the nation. He's a threat to our freedom. He's a threat to democracy. He's a threat to everything that America stands for. Again, if you're just kind of an average crazy lib sitting around hearing this kind of talk, you're taking this stuff seriously. This is very much a will no one rid me of this meddlesome priest kind of scenario, right? When you keep, because they also started adding existential to this. If you guys notice this, they started adding existential threat to all of their rhetoric. They thought that was just a cool thing to tag in. The thing is, that's not just a cool thing to tag in. That's not just a fun turn of phrase. It makes you sound very, very intelligent. Existential threat has a meaning. It means a threat to your existence, the existence of something. If you don't deal with existential threats, you die. The thing that you love dies. The thing that you're talking about is over. That's what existential threat means. So when you say Donald Trump is an existential threat, when you say Republicans, or MAGA supporters are an existential threat to this country, to democracy, what you are telling, quite literally, your supporters, is that these people, if they're not dealt with, will kill you or will destroy our way of life. That is as friend and enemy as politics gets. That is as very clear a friend-enemy distinction as you get. We are friend, they are enemy. They are an existential threat to us. This is what Carl Schmitt because it actually creates the friend enemy distinction when you have this existential threat to the identity, the narrative of one group. And once you have that, then anything is legitimate in trying to stop that. And they know that, which is why they were deploying this language. For a very long time, we've had to hear from every agency under the sun, right? The FBI, the DOJ, Department of Homeland Security, even the Pentagon recently was saying that like pro-lifers were super dangerous. Why is the army commenting on domestic possible threats, which aren't threats at all? Well, not for any good reason. That's the stuff you do right before you use the military on a people. And it's very clear that that's what the Biden administration is planning to do. It really is. I mean, there's no reason to mince words at this point. You're not training your military force to see the people of the country as terrorist threats unless you plan to deploy them against those threats. And so we've had to hear about this forever. That everybody with a MAGA hat who protests anything is a existential threat to the country. Now, when you say that and then you get a assassination attempt on Donald Trump, you start to wonder how serious that could be, right? It obviously the greatest threat for domestic terror was some leftist who was trying to kill Donald Trump. That's very clear. But instead, we've had this rhetoric. And the reason we've had this rhetoric is they were trying to encourage exactly this kind of attack on Trump. That's all there is to it. What we saw on Saturday was a media coordinated and Democrat coordinated assassination attempt on Donald Trump. That's the beginning and the end of this story. Okay. It was very obvious what they were attempting to do. They were trying to whip every one of the people who listen to them 24/7 or just deluged in the propaganda constantly, buried in this absolutely poisonous rhetoric. And they're trying to push them to the edge. They're trying to push them to the edge. Now, a lot of speculation has come out of the aftermath of this. If you've watched any of the footage, you know how crazy this thing is. Donald Trump, again, 1 inch away from being dead. He credits turning his head to look at a chart about immigration as the only reason he actually got out of the way of the bullet and it just clipped his ear. Imagine the amazing the amazing providence of that. Just I looked at the immigration stats, and that's what saved my life. Noticing saves lives, as I saw someone say on Twitter. But just imagine, how crazy all of this could have been. But a lot of people have speculated, looking at the Secret Service protection in this scenario, that there may have been more to this. I'll say this. The left immediately started coming out with conspiracy theories as soon as Donald Trump got shot. Because as soon as Trump got shot, he immediately popped up, pumped his hand in the air with blood streaked down his face in front of an American flag and started chanting, "Fight, fight," with his fist in the air. Now, you can have a lot of problems with Donald Trump. You can have a lot to say about his personal foibles. You can have a lot to say about his failures in office. There are plenty of reasons to criticize Donald Trump. But in that moment, when Donald Trump was shot, he did not stay on the ground cowering. There's actually that shot of him face down, facing the ground with the blood pouring down his face. And you just know in that moment what's going through his mind. Do I run? Do I freeze? Do I hide? Where's the next shot going to come from? He has no idea that this gunman's dead. He has no idea that he's safe. For all he knows, the minute he takes another step, he's going to get shot. But what does he do? He pops up and immediately reassures his followers in a moment of incredible, incredible danger. Whatever else you think about Donald Trump, whatever else you believe about him, and you might be right about him, but whatever you believe about Donald Trump, the man is brave. He's a lion. That's all there is to it. Sorry. There's plenty of criticisms of Donald Trump. The man is not a coward. The man is a fighter. The man is a leader. That's the kind of that is world historical mandate of heaven type stuff. Okay? That's the kind of stuff that forges great men. I'm not saying Donald Trump is a great man yet. I don't know. But I do know this is the kind of crucible that forges him. And that iconic photo of him popping up and pumping that fist with the blood streaked down his face as the Secret Service tries to carry him off. That's the kind of stuff that you'll see forever. That is history. You witness history. It's real. It's happening right now. History is not over. Real politics are back, whether you like it or not. And that's the moment we're in. When Democrats saw that the things they knew about Trump could not work in that moment. They saw Trump as a craven coward. They saw him as being this idiot who was leading a bunch of rubes, but he's a coward. He's immediately would run away the minute that anything terrible happened. You can't think clearly, look at that picture, and confirm your priors if you're a leftist. And so they started spinning all these conspiracy theories about how it was staged and Trump actually, faked all of this so it could increase his popularity. I don't want to do what the left's doing, right? I don't want to immediately dive into conspiracies here. We still don't know very much about the shooter, except apparently the guy was in a BlackRock advertisement. I'm not kidding. That's a real thing. It's confirmed. Apparently, they went to his school to talk about how much they donate to schools or whatever, and he happened to be in the video. The guy's only 20, so a couple of years ago he was in high school. So they've pulled the video down now, but literally the guy was in a BlackRock video. So that does not help with your conspiracy theories. Also, there's a lot of crazy stuff going on with the Secret Service, right? You can see that the shooter was on top of a roof that was only 100 feet away, or sorry, a few hundred feet away from the event. It's a raised position. It like I'm not a tactical master, right? I'm not some guy who has any military training in this area. I'm just a guy who's watched some movies about snipers and played some video games where you do sniping. But even I, in that position, looking around, would have been like, yeah, that rooftop right there that has a clear view of the stage and is well within the rifle range of any guy who's ever been, to the range and practice a few shots. Yeah, that's probably a roof we want to secure or at least keep an eye on. And they didn't. None of that was covered. It was not protected. This guy was able to get to the roof. Apparently, multiple people had already said he had suspicious behavior. He got onto the roof with a full rifle, the ability to get onto this roof. He's crawling around on the roof, and there's plenty of footage of people spotting him. Like, this isn't some speculation. It's not weird conspiracy theory. The guy got onto the roof. Multiple people saw him. Multiple people were warning the authorities for minutes that this guy is climbing around on the roof, on the stage, while Trump is on stage. It's just absolutely wild. And they just kept Trump on stage. He keeps speaking. Nobody takes any action. People have speculated about whether or not the counter snipers that the police had deployed, or possibly the Secret Service. It's not clear who belonged to everything at that moment. They seem to have eyes on the guy. Now, I don't know. Again, I'm not in that scenario. I'm not somebody who has a lot of training in this. But guys like Eric Prince did break this down and just said this is an absolute disaster. Everybody I've seen who has any kind of military training has looked at this and said, I don't know what's happening here. Now, you can say this is a conspiracy, or you could just say that the Secret Service is inept. I would say possibly. I think the most likely scenario here, and again, this is all being developed right now, guys. We're not making any definitive claims. But from everything I see here, my guess would be that the Secret Service sent its like D team. It's like D-list team. If you take a look at the people who were guarding Trump, they were, let's say, diverse. A lot of people who may not have been the first draft picks when it came to putting people in the Secret Service, but the Secret Service has been pushing that diversity is its strength. Not strong enough, I guess, for them to do their job. But that's been all over. Chris Rufo has been sending out all the different documents about how they're trying to increase their DEI quotient, make sure they have, I think it's like 30 to 40% female and everything else, of course, that they want to do. So it didn't look like they had the best guys on Trump's detail. We already know the Democratic politicians had been trying to reduce or remove Donald Trump's detail previously. We also know that there had been requests for him to have more agents, and those had been denied. So it was already clear that Trump was basically getting the bare minimum that they would provide. I mean, guys like RFK aren't even getting Secret Service at all. So it's very clear the Biden administration is pretty open to exposing its political opponents to possible violence. That's pretty much been their standard operating procedure. They've been encouraging the violence. They've been providing the minimal necessary protection, if any protection at all. And so I don't know that this is so much a conspiracy. I don't know so much that there was some order top down for someone to take a shot at Trump, though really can't rule this out at this point. These people are as evil as you think they are. But I think the more likely scenario is they just went ahead and gave Donald Trump the worst possible security detail. And they were kind of told, play things as loose as possible. We're going to spin up as many crazy people as possible, and then just let the chips fall where they may. That would be my guess. I would guess that the shooter probably didn't have any direct contact, wasn't encouraged, wasn't sent on a specific mission, so much as the media has just been blasting, "Hey, you should get rid of Junior Hitler before he does anything terrible." For a long time, and basically they were just hoping someone would take them seriously, and then someone did, and then the Secret Service was like, "Well, if the D team is there, then it's not a big deal. Things happen." I think that was far more likely what the scenario is, but still, it looks incredibly shady, and I don't really blame anyone for assuming the worst in this scenario because our leaders are evil. Our evil leaders do want Donald Trump dead. They've been very clear about that. They probably a lot of people jumped on Twitter right after and talked about how they wish that nobody had missed. People like the video game streamer Destiny were talking about how the guy should have been a better shot. This guy is. I've been asked to debate this guy several times, and I've said no each time because I know exactly who he is. It's a waste of my time. The guy is a complete scumbag. He's a complete liar. He's just a degenerate freak. And the fact that he would come out and not only was he saying he wished that Trump had died, he was insulting the heroic guy who got killed during this whole thing. Trump wasn't the only one hit. This guy Corey Comparator, I'm sorry if I'm saying his name wrong, but he's a guy who just celebrated his 50th birthday. He was a volunteer fire chief in Pennsylvania, and his daughter posted on her Facebook page that this guy was a loving father. He's a devoted Christian. Everybody loved him. You can still see him posting about how excited he was on Twitter to go to this Trump rally. And in this moment where this guy opens fire, uh, the the uh, the volunteer firefighter instinctively, this first responder just instinctively shoves his wife and his daughter to the ground, covers them with his own body, and ends up taking a bullet that was very likely going to hit them. And he died tragically. I mean, heroically. It's horrible, but at the same time, this guy covered himself in glory. He gave the ultimate price in a split second. He didn't hesitate. He threw himself right between that bullet and his family. And you know, try not to get broken up about that kind of thing, but it's hard not to. When you see that incredible bravery, that instinctual bravery is God bless the man. But the fact that a guy like Destiny is on Twitter insulting this guy is just. But that there's so many on the left who are like this. There are multiple Democratic operatives who did cracks about the people people dying at the rally, getting hurt at the rally. If only Trump had been hit. Tenacious D is on stage talking about don't miss Trump next time. This is a very common sentiment. To be clear, the left is going to groom another one of these guys. They're not dialing their rhetoric down at all. MSNBC, CNN, they immediately jumped right back into this. Idiot celebrities like George Takei, they just immediately started calling Trump the bad guy. He was asking for it. If he hadn't just worn that short dress, then none of this would have happened, right? They said how Trump was the real danger. His supporters were the real danger. They're the ones that caused this violent rhetoric. We're already seeing this. So to be very clear, if you think that the left is taking this off ramp, you've lost your mind. They are not. They are putting their foot to the floor. They immediately pivoted right back to blaming Trump. The Atlantic immediately runs a piece in the shadow of Trump being shot saying, "Oh, Trump is a dictator. He asked for it." That's what you're saying. That's David Frum, I believe, is the one who wrote that piece. So the left did not hesitate. They're going right back to the very rhetoric that created the scenario. They're not letting things cool off. In a sane country, in a country that was not absolutely trying to destroy itself, a presidential candidate, a former president, getting shot and immediately standing up in a heroic pose and rallying his supporters. That would be seen as a moment to unify the country, to solidify the country. That's how this would be understood. Anybody who is trying to push the hostility would immediately understand that this is a moment for people to unify. But nope, the left wanted more. They immediately dove right back into this. It's a horrible thing to behold. Now, the left knows they're screwed when it comes to the election. We had multiple Democratic campaign analysts and strategists basically on background or talking to reporters, other people overheard just saying this is over, the election's over, this is done, right? Like you have the contrast between a guy like Joe Biden who can barely speak, who can barely stand on stage, who needs a teleprompter to get through more than three sentences. And then you have somebody like Donald Trump who literally can take a bullet, and his instinct is to not run, not hide, not cry, not crap his pants, which is something that Joe Biden seems to do when he's just standing around. But instead, immediately pop up, chant, fight, fight. Has to be dragged off stage as blood streams down his face as he stands in front of an American flag by Secret Service agents. That contrast could not be more stark. The election is over, right? That much is sure. Yeah, maybe they're going to try to replace Joe Biden. I don't know. That seems like a fool's errand at this point. Joe Biden's going to lose this presidential election. Anybody else you place in that spot is going to lose this presidential election. And it seems like it's just best to sacrifice Joe Biden at this point. If the left is smart, they would just go ahead and set themselves up for a loss. Say, all right, this one's, it's better for us to go ahead and make people believe that the process still works anyway. Obviously, the things necessary to fortify this election would be so radical at this point. You'd basically need to manufacture 10 points or more. That's so difficult that it just makes sense to prepare yourself, shore up your ability to win legislative seats, become obstructionists again, turn the deep state on Trump, lock him up, not actually lock him up in prison, but they already attempted that, but go ahead and make sure it's impossible for his administration to function the same way you did the first time. That would be the logical response, right? If the elites were who academic agent believed that they were, that's what they would do. And you can already see some of them trying to do this. You can see them trying to make this pivot. But I don't think they're going to be able to turn this aircraft carrier around because we already see what's happening. They had to pull Morning Joe this morning on CNN because they were worried about how inflammatory his rhetoric was going to be in a moment after a man got shot. They knew that their people are unbridled ideological maniacs. And they wanted to make sure that they could pull these guys off the air because they couldn't guarantee that they wouldn't just get up there and say something like, well, Donald Trump should have been shot, right? Like they knew that the reality is that anybody they put on camera from their side very likely would say something like that. So they actually pulled Morning Joe off the air. That's how bad, that's how insane these people are. Now, it would, of course, be best for my country if academic agent was right, in a sense, right? I would much rather it be the case that my country could pull it together, that even the left elites would recognize that they're going to destroy the country if they keep doing what they're doing. That's what you would hope. That's what you would hope would be the case. But I am reasonably sure that's not going to be the case. I'm reasonably sure that these people cannot control themselves. They absolutely cannot. Now, Trump has to make a VP pick soon. It's going to be announced at the Republican convention. And a lot of people are speculating, what does this attack mean for the VP pick? Now, I think if I was advising Trump, if I was somewhere in the room, I would say you have to pick an absolute maniac. You have to pick somebody that just terrifies the left because obviously they are literally willing to try to kill you. That's not a figure of speech. It's not a joke about assassination insurance. This is very real. This is a real thing you have to consider. The person on the bottom of the ticket, the person, the VP, cannot be somebody who is just an agent of the regime who will easily be led around by their nose the minute that Trump is out of office. Because if that's the case, they will just find someone to hit you again. To be very clear, the left is already back spinning their machinery of radicalization. They are already trying to recruit people just like the one who has already taken a shot at Trump. So a lot of people have speculated. A lot of people have speculated that you could get somebody like an Eric Prince, right? Somebody who is a military experience, can provide private security, someone who's outside in some ways of the regime, but very inside in others. I understand that. I don't think that's a viable option for them, but maybe. I mean, I get it. I understand the appeal there. When you have a situation like this, I think they are still likely to go with a politician. Some people have said Bannon's a possibility. Obviously, Bannon is a strategist, very much someone like a Dick Cheney, who would be able to bring a lot of capability to that position. But I don't know that they would do that either. My guess is it will probably be somebody like JD Vance. Or you think at this moment they might even put somebody like DeSantis back on the table. I know a lot of people are worried about the possibility of Vance or DeSantis as regime creatures. I'm less concerned about that than others, but both of them have the level of rhetoric necessary. They're not just neocons with a coat of paint. They've demonstrated some level of ability to push back against the regime. Again, I know a lot of people are particularly worried about DeSantis in that area, but this would be my assessment, at least. I think if you pick someone like Tim Scott or somebody, that's just a terrible thing to do at this point. You don't need someone squishy. You don't need someone compared, or you don't need somebody who is easily drawn into the machinations of the deep state. You need somebody who they are worried about, who they equally would want to push away. Other people have suggested Thomas Massey. I like Thomas Massey a lot. I think he's great. I would say that Massey is in a personal scenario. His wife just died recently, just literally a few days ago. I don't know if he's in a position really to do this. I'm not saying he can't. I'm just saying, having been in his position in a very real way, I would not have wanted to run for president when I was in a moment like that. I don't know. I certainly couldn't have done it. I don't know how he could do it. But maybe that's what great men are forged out of. But I think that'd be a very difficult thing to do. So there's a lot of speculation on who Trump would pick. But again, if it was me, I would not be picking somebody like Rubio. I would not be picking someone like Scott. I would be picking somebody who really would put the fear of God into the left. So that's a huge thing going forward. I would, however, if I was Trump, immediately hire Eric Prince for my security detail. I would immediately start. I mean, quite frankly, assembling a Praetorian Guard that you can trust, because you can't trust Secret Service at this point, even if they were just inept. They clearly were inept. There's no excuse for the way that they conducted themselves. And so I would not put my life in the hands of those people again. I would supplement or completely replace that security force with another. So when we talk about parallel institutions, looks like you might need a parallel institution straight up all the way to security services. That's how deeply the corruption of the regime has gone. All these things that we thought were untouchable, the neutral forces to the highest degree, like the Secret Service or the military. No, they're completely woke. They're completely DEI'd. They're completely destroyed. So I would not trust them. So that said, the final thing that I wanted to bring up was that Trump's documents case was dismissed today. The judge in that case went ahead and said that basically Jack Smith was appointed unconstitutionally. That the office of special prosecutor, the way that it was appointed, was done unconstitutionally, and therefore the case that he brought against Trump is null and void. Which is of course a big win for Trump. That's one more of these things that's off his plate. And it really goes to show you they've brought out everything against Trump, right? They tried to go ahead and bankrupt him. They tried to go ahead and get him off the ballot. They tried to go ahead and make it illegal for him to run. They tried to go ahead and throw him in jail. And now they've literally tried to kill him. And none of this has worked. At some point, you just have to acknowledge divine providence has to be at play. Again, you don't want to throw that around. Trump, the anointed one. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying the man is obviously supposed to run for president. And I know a lot of DeSantis guys got very angry at me when I said that the first time, but this is exactly what I told them. I said, look, Trump is on a date with destiny. I don't know where that destiny takes him. And by that, I don't mean the terrible streamer. I mean the actual force. He's on a rendezvous with destiny. And I don't know where that destiny takes him. But he's obviously in the currents of it. And so I would encourage people to understand the moment you're in. It's a moment that is scary in many ways. Obviously, something like this happening is terrible for the country, and I am praying for the country, and I encourage for you to pray for the country. Do you hope that the left will learn something from this? They've made it pretty clear that they won't, but I'm still praying that they will because the alternative is very bad. All right, guys, let's take a look at the questions of the people here real quick. We've got Jacob Zindel. He says the MSM constantly screaming fascist, existential threat to our democracy. Will now call staccatic terrorism a right wing conspiracy theory. Yes, they've been warning exactly about this. They, of course, it's ultimately projection. Do exactly what you accuse your opponent of what you're going to do. They've been using this language. They've been driving people towards this, and now that their language has culminated in exactly the result that they wanted, they're going to pretend like the right is the real threat, and they've never heard of this term that they invented. And I'm not going to use the newspeak because I avoid newspeak whenever possible. But you're right that they're doing this is exactly what they said they were worried about. They manifested it with the violence in their rhetoric, and now they're pretending like they have no idea what we're talking about. Robert Weinsfield here says, a non-head turn and we get Nikki Haley. Could anyone organize the right better than Trump at this point? Is there any backup plan? No, I don't think there's a backup plan. I don't think they have any plan, which is terrifying, but that's where we are. But yeah, it really was. It really is a scenario where a slight head turn to look at a chart with statistics on it, specifically immigration statistics, which is, again, another amazing thing. Again, hard to ignore divine providence here, but without that head turn, yeah, radically different timeline. And who knows who they would have put on for the Republicans. I think we would have had much deeper problems than the presidential race at that point, however. But let's all be glad we are not on that timeline. Machiavelli sucks to go says, what should we do? Hard to say what we should do at this point. Obviously, the thing that you want to avoid is giving the Democrats any excuse to spin the storyline the way that they want. The momentum is all on Trump's side now. The race is pretty much stitched up for him. The left is going to go unhinged. They're going to keep saying what they're saying. If I was Trump, like I said, I would shore up my security greatly. I would make sure that I had the guy behind me who had my back and was so terrifying that no one would want to go ahead and try this again. But I think that everybody on the right who has any position of power should be trying to force the the Secret Service to testify immediately. Everyone involved should be fired. They won't be, to be clear. I don't think anyone will probably be fired, would be my guess. But they should be investigating. We should be bringing as much of this to the front as possible. Very helpful. Actually, here's something you can do. Amanda Milnes was asking every internet autist to comb through all the Democrats who were saying anything violent or dangerous or encouraging of violence and to compile that. That's very useful right now to have those receipts on hand. So if you want something to do in this moment, I know she's still collecting those So you can do that if you want to take action. That is the type of action that you should take. Let's see. Timon says, "Do you think progressives will be pining uh, for the opponents not enemies style politics of the 60s and 70s in mythologizing the past when America was 85% white, sexist, and bigoted?" Yeah, they probably won't mention the demographic realities of those prior political moments. Though to be clear, in our prior political moments, we did have a president actually assassinated, and other assassinations take place. Obviously, RFK, JFK, MLK, so many people. Ronald Reagan was shot. So it's not like this. The politics of the past were without any of this. We just like to forget those cycles. We forget the race riots of the '60s. We forget the assassination attempts and successful assassinations somehow. Anon Reviewer says, "Why can't I find your Con 4 talk on YouTube?" They're slowly rolling those out. So they started with some of the biggest ones, the Josh Hollies and the JD Vances and others. My all the panel talks. I was on one of the panel talks, and I gave a speech during that. So that will be up at some point. I'll let people know when that's there. I did do a article version of my talk. So if you just really want to get to it, I went ahead and published that last week. In fact, it was I did it at the Blaze Studio, and a lot of people were confused because it had like that microphone, and somebody else edited it. So they're like, "What happened to Auron's voice?" It's because it all went through different audio equipment, and because it got edited by somebody who's not me. So don't worry, we'll go back to the organic version of editing soon. But if you are interested in what my talk consisted of, then you can read it there. But you should also watch the panel because I was on there with Paul Gottfried, and Jeremy Carl and some other great people. I think it's well worth your time. Uh, and on reviewer also says a lot of people have said Trump wasn't given adequate Secret Service resources. What would have been adequate resources look like? I would have said uh, agents that looked more like what you would expect Secret Service agents to look like, and not like 5'3" females. Also, would say they obviously needed more agents. They could not sufficiently cover all the lines of sight. If you can't cover a rooftop that's obvious, that is that obvious, then you most definitely should have more agents involved. The detail was inadequate. When I was a newspaper reporter, we had Barack Obama come to our area, and he literally went to the swamp because I live in South Florida. So we went out to the Everglades. And even in the Everglades, where there was nobody, there's no building for miles around, they had these raised kind of like cherry pickers, like bucket trucks with Secret Service snipers everywhere. So even in a completely flat swamp, they locked down every line of sight for miles. The fact that they did not do that with Trump clearly means there was a problem. Intentional, lazy, intentionally understaffed. Who knows? I can't answer those questions for you. Let's see here. Elijah Timon says, when Tom Schaller and Paul Waldman wrote the book White Rage, they were defaming fathers like Corey Campier. Absolutely. They're human trash, the garbage. And the fact that guys like Mark Milley were talking about that, who are in the highest positions of military leadership, means that our military, our government hates people like Corey. He was the exact kind of guy that the media is trying to warn you about, saying this is the evil, this is the domestic terrorist threat, this is the guy that's going to transform America and make it this terrible theocracy or whatever. No, this is the kind of guy who loves Jesus and loves his family and is willing to put his life on the line and die for his family. And you don't have to explain who he was. You don't have to explain who a guy like Corey was. He showed you. That's all there is to it. The proof is in action. He's a hero, and the kind of guys who would spit on him and people like him are the trash of the planet. That's really all there is to say. Let's see. Creeper Weirdo says, "You think you're hate the left enough, but you don't." Yeah, let's just say that my journalist meme got a lot of play here. And then Pat B says, "Bad security sabotages Trump by raising campaign costs, risks, and difficulty for daily operations. Unveiling would just be a bonus. Narrative, unaliving would just be a bonus. Narrative, Trump got his own fans unalive by ignoring the warnings." Yeah, that's what they're doing. That's the type of narrative that they're trying to run. Horrific. Again, You know that the people who show up on places like MSNBC and CNN, to say that kind of stuff, like, I don't know how you have a soul at that point. Like, I genuinely don't. I don't know. I know people have to pay the rent. I know people hold different beliefs from me and genuinely believe them. I can create a theory of mind, for those facts. But to see what happened to Trump, not just to Trump, but to a heroic guy, uh, like Corey, I don't know, man. That's another level. That's a level of evil that, I don't know. All the gold in the world isn't worth it. Anyway. All right, guys, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. Thank you so much for coming by. It was great talking to you. If this is your first time on the channel, please make sure that you go ahead and subscribe. If you would like to turn on the notifications and the bell and click the bell, that means that you'll be able to catch these shows when they go live. If you'd like to get the broadcast as podcast, make sure you go ahead and subscribe to the Ormer McIntyre Show on your favorite podcast platform. And when you do, leave a rating or review. It helps with the algorithm. And of course, if you want to get my book, The Total State, you can do that on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Books a Million, or your favorite local bookstore. Thank you once again for watching, everybody. Be safe, pray for the country, and I'll talk to you next time.